Okay, let's start this deep dive with a statistic that really stops you cold. We looked at the sources, and they say something like 90% of startups, they don't even make it past year one.
90%.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's staggering. And it's not just a high number. It feels like an uphill battle right from the get-go. And the sources are pretty clear, aren't they? It's usually not about founders lacking passion or, not putting in the hours.
exactly, which is fascinating because when you dig into the analysis like these sources did, looking at hundreds of failed companies, it points to something else.
Right. It's less about just bad luck or not working hard enough. It seems to be much more about, well, falling into the same traps, a set of surprisingly common, sometimes really avoidable mistakes.
Avoidable is the key word. So maybe let's set aside the usual startup hype for a bit. This deep dive, drawing from these sources, is basically a survival guide, plain and simple. Our mission today is to really lay out the five biggest errors that kept showing up, the ones the sources actually call the deadly mistakes.
Yeah.
The idea is by understanding these, you may be building something right now, you can hopefully sidestep them, improve your chances of being in that surviving 10%, the ones who get past that first year.
Okay, let's do it. Let's get right into what these sources pinpoint as the critical vulnerabilities. And we're not talking minor stumbles here. These are often uh, structural flaws that can just undermine everything else, no matter how much effort you pour in.
So the first one, it almost sounds too obvious, right? But the sources insist it's incredibly common. It's building something nobody actually wants, no market demand. The material really hammers this home, calls it the ultimate sin, that build it and they will come fallacy.
Well, it forces you to ask a really tough question, doesn't it? Are you solving a problem people genuinely have and are willing to pay to fix? Or are you just kind of in love with your own idea? It's easy to get fixated on a clever solution, the tech,
Yeah.
and skip the hard part, verifying if anyone actually needs it badly enough. You can engineer the most beautiful product, but if that burning need isn't there, it's pretty much dead on arrival.
Brutal, but it makes total sense. No demand, no revenue. Which leads straight into the second deadly mistake the sources highlight, running out of cash. This one's described as the silent killer because it often just creeps up on you, right? Until, bam, it's too late.
Yeah, and it's not always about starting with too little funding, though that happens.
Mhm.
The analysis shows it's often deeply about not understanding and obsessively tracking your cash flow, like really understanding it. You might be making sales, maybe even profitable on paper, but if customers pay you in 90 days and your suppliers need paying in 30, or if your spending just runs ahead of the money actually landing in your account, you're heading for trouble. The source really emphasizes knowing your runway, literally how many months you've got left until the cash hits zero, knowing that almost to the day.
Wow, to the day. That's intense.
That precision is critical. Losing track of cash flow, well, it's like suffocating slowly.
Okay, to the day. Got it. And often linked to burning cash too quickly is the third mistake, hiring too fast. The source calls this team bloat.
hmm It's tempting, isn't it? You want to feel like a real company, hire a bunch of people early on, but adding those big fixed costs, mostly salaries, before you've got a proven sustainable way to make money, that's just incredibly risky. You burn through your precious runway way faster. It adds immense pressure right when you should be laser focused on finding that product market fit, finding reliable sales channels. Scale the revenue first, then the team. That's the warning from the sources.
That makes sense. Scale revenue, then team. Okay, so number four connects back to the first point, that building in isolation, but it's more about attitude. Ignoring customer feedback. The sources, they don't pull any punches here. They call it ego blindness.
Ouch. Yeah. This is where founders can get, overly attached to their original vision. They start seeing feedback, especially the critical stuff, not as goal, not as valuable data to help evolve the product, but as, I don't know, like people just don't get it. Or even as a personal attack. Your product simply has to adapt. It has to solve real problems for actual users. Staying stubbornly glued to your initial idea when the market's clearly telling you something else, that's just a fast track to becoming irrelevant.
Right. Adapt or die, basically. And then finally, the fifth deadly mistake. This one feels like you see it everywhere. No clear differentiation. Getting stuck in that Me Too trap.
Exactly. Just launching something that's like, it's like Company X, but maybe slightly cheaper or with this one tiny tweak. In a crowded market, that's almost setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah.
If you can't clearly, compellingly say what makes your thing uniquely valuable, what problem only you solve this specific way, why someone should pick you over the known options, you just become noise, a commodity,
Mm-hmm.
and competing solely on price. That's a race to the bottom. And it's a race that startups in their first year almost never win.
Okay, so those are the 5 big pitfalls. No market demand, running out of cash, hiring too fast, ignoring feedback, and no differentiation. If you can just identify and steer clear of those, you're already way ahead of the game, it sounds like. But
Yeah.
what's the flip side? How did the sources say you actively fight back against these? What are the survival strategies?
Yeah, so for each of those deadly mistakes, the sources outline a pretty direct counter strategy. So to fight no market demand, the advice is unambiguous. Validate before you build.
Right. Prove people actually want it before you sink months, maybe years, into building the whole thing. So that means like testing interest, landing pages, maybe pre-orders, mock-ups, even those fake door tests you hear about. Anything to get potential customers to signal they're interested or, better yet, put down some money before the product is fully baked. Market validation first.
Precisely. Get that proof up front. And for the running out of cash problem, the counter is basically 2 words: obsess over cash flow.
Obsess, not just, check your bank balance now and then. The source implies this relentless focus, right? Knowing your burn rate, understanding when money comes in versus when it goes out, cutting costs hard before you're desperate, and
Yeah.
always looking for ways to stretch that runway.
Exactly. Constant vigilance. Then, to avoid team bloat, the strategy is kind of stark. Stay a solo army as long as possible.
Huh. Sounds a bit lonely, but I get the point. It's about leverage, isn't it? Automate everything you possibly can. Use freelancers or outsource stuff that isn't core. Lean heavily on tech. Only bring on full-time people when the business model is actually working and the revenue can comfortably handle those added fixed costs.
That's the idea. Keep it lean until you're sure. Now, counteracting ego blindness. Making sure you don't ignore feedback requires you to talk to customers daily.
Daily, wow, and not just casual chats. The sources really emphasize actively going out and finding feedback, especially the uncomfortable stuff. Listen to their screams, like what are their biggest pain points, their frustrations. Let that guide your product roadmap, your priorities. Your users are your reality check. Don't tune them out.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
They are your best source of truth. And finally, to avoid getting trapped as a me too, you have to actively find your only.
Your only. Okay, so what's the one compelling reason someone absolutely have to choose you? What unique pain do you nail? Or what unique value do you deliver that nobody else does, or at least not in the same way? That means really understanding your specific customer and what everyone else is doing. And if you can't easily articulate your only, well, the sources suggest you haven't really found it yet. And that's a huge vulnerability.
This is where the analysis gets really interesting. Actually, the effort needed to truly stand out.
Absolutely. And building on these core strategies, the sources also throw in a really practical pro tip, something born from, hard experience. Assume everything costs, how long things take. Acquiring customers, assume it will all take twice as long and cost 3 times as much as your initial optimistic estimate.
2 tons longer, 3 tons the cost. Oof.
Yeah, but building that buffer into how you think and plan financially, that can literally be the thing that saves you when those inevitable surprises hit. It's easy to hear all this and nod along thinking, yeah, okay, makes sense, common sense. But the sources really stress that these are the specific things that killed off that 90%. And conversely, when you look at companies that did make it through those really tough early days, you often see these principles in action, don't you?
Oh, definitely. Think about, say, Airbnb. In their super early days,
Mm-hmm.
they hit that cash crunch hard. Running out of cash, right? And they famously started selling those novelty cereal boxes, remember? Obama O's and Captain McCain's. It was kind of a wild, desperate move, but it was purely to generate immediate cash, extend their runway. It shows that level of obsess over cash flow the sources talk about. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked.
Right, the cereal box hustle, yeah.
Yeah.
Or what about Slack? It wasn't even meant to be a messaging app initially, was it? It was like an internal tool for a video game company that failed.
Exactly. They essentially pivoted completely based on validating what was working for their own internal team. They focused on that specific need. That's validate before you build and talk to customers daily, even if the first customer was themselves. They listened to what was already providing value, not just the original dream.
Yeah, and Square, the payment company.
The founders reportedly maxed out their personal credit cards to get the initial funding and development going. Now, that's extreme, but it highlights that relentless focus on getting the resources however you can when you're obsessing over cash flow and just trying to build that initial runway.
So these successful companies weren't perfect. They faced these fundamental problems and actually dealt with them.
They confronted them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings us really nicely to this powerful, practical challenge that the source material puts forward for you, the listener. They call it the pre-mortem challenge.
The premortem. Okay, I like the sound of that.
It basically flips the usual script. Instead of just planning for everything to go right, you actively plan for failure. But you do it before it happens. It's all about facing those potential deadly mistakes head on, right now.
Okay, so how does it work? The challenge has 2 steps, right? Step 1, you sit down, ideally with your co-founders, key team members, whoever's crucial, and you are brutally, unsparingly honest. You write down all the reasons why your business, your current project, whatever it is, why it could fail.
Yeah. Imagine it's a year from now and it has failed.
Yeah.
The whole thing went belly up. Now, looking back from that imaginary future, list every single possible cause. Was it market demand? Did the cash run out? Was the team wrong? Did you ignore that critical feedback? Were you just another face in the crowd? Really dig deep, no holding back.
Get every fear, every potential weak spot out there, all those pitfalls we just discussed, and maybe others specific to your situation, just get it all down. And then, step 2 is critical. Immediately after you've listed all those potential failure points, you take concrete action, right now, to fix them, or at least mitigate them.
Exactly. So if no market demand was high on your list, your immediate action isn't build faster. It's pause major development and implement real validation steps today. If running out of cash scared you, the action is create a detailed cash flow forecast now and set up daily tracking. If you worried about ignoring customer feedback, commit to a schedule. Set up customer interviews or feedback analysis starting this week. Real, tangible actions.
So the core message from these sources seems incredibly clear. Survival, especially in that first year, isn't about being some kind of superhero founder who never makes mistakes. It's really about having the discipline and maybe the humility to see the potential fatal flaws coming and correcting them early, proactively, before they actually take you down.
Couldn't have said it better. So what does this whole deep dive boil down to for you, listening right now? Well, the real key to getting through that treacherous first year, according to this analysis, seems to lie in staring potential failure right in the face, long before it becomes reality. It's a fundamental shift, isn't it? Moving from just, hoping for success to actively, diligently, sometimes uncomfortably working to prevent failure. Is that honest self-assessment followed by immediate focused action that seems to dramatically shift the odds in your favor. So maybe the question to leave you with is, what potential failure point are you going to confront today?